we can pretty much exclusively bring to you. The mainstream media has not been reporting this. One of them is a slide included in a U.S. intelligence assessment with respect to how China is going to deal with the Ukraine situation and the situation through which they may increase the amount of aid to Russia. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. This is basically an internal U.S. assessment of what the U.S. believes China's red lines would be. So let me go ahead and read all of this that we wrote here. So the documents show that a highly classified U.S. intelligence assessment that Beijing is likely to use any attack by Ukraine deep inside of Russia to rhetorically attack NATO and may influence their decision to provide lethal aid to Moscow. The documents show that the U.S. believes China would see any Ukrainian attack on Moscow as evidence that Washington is directly responsible for escalating the conflict and would further justify their decision to provide lethal aid if they choose to do so. Now, the reason why I think that this internal assessment is so important, Krystal, even though it's been basically ignored for some reason, it seems, by the media, is that inside of this, you can see the direct red lines, is that Beijing has any Ukrainian attack on Moscow that uses U.S. or NATO members' weapons, that's a red line for directly responsible conflict that would give them possible justification for providing Russia with lethal aid. Any increase, and I'm looking directly at the text from the slide itself, of the scale and the scope of material that the U.S. is providing them in terms of possible fighter jets and others, that would be a trigger as well. But really what you see is that China is looking at the situation and watching the Ukrainians very closely, and that also any attack on anything that Russian leaders see as a strategic attack would also be a trigger for Beijing. So this is one where the direct red lines that the U.S. intelligence community believes of what China's, red lines in the conflict are is a highly significant piece of information that we're able to bring to you guys exclusively. And we have also a statement from the Department of Defense that we can read to everybody that is just kind of global about the actual response. Go ahead, Krystal.
This is what they've been sending to every news outlet. I saw the Wall Street Journal had the exact same comment here, but we want to read it to you in full. They say the Department of Defense continues to review and assess the validity of the photograph documents that are circulating on social media sites and that appear to contain sensitive and highly classified material. An interagency effort has been stood up focused on assessing the impact these photograph documents could have on U.S. national security and on our allies and partners. Over the weekend, U.S. officials have engaged with allies and partners and have informed relevant congressional committees of jurisdiction about the disclosure. The Department of Defense's highest priority is the defense of our nation and our national security. We have referred this matter to the Department of Justice, which has opened a criminal investigation. We're going to get more in a moment into the criminal investigation here and also their efforts to suppress any of these documents on social media. But what jumps out right away here is they're not actually denying the veracity of the documents. In fact, in a way, they are somewhat confirming it because they say that they're photograph documents that are circulating that appear to contain sensitive and highly classified material. And they are continuing to review and assess the validity of what they describe as those photographed documents. So, again, really highly significant. They are not actually outright denying the accuracy of the information contained in these documents.
Yeah, so that was in response not only to our question, but the media's question. I specifically listed all of the information that we were able to report to everybody here, to the Department of Defense, the White House, and everybody was involved. They were given the full ability to deny it and to spin us and to call us and tell us that it's not true if they wanted. They took the opportunity not to do so and just to provide this global statement kind of on what it is. So I think that you can generally take away from that what you will. We also had a quote from a Quincy Institute expert that we reached out to in order to try and give some context on these documents.
That's right. So George Beebe, who's the director of grand strategy at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, I asked him what he made of the China piece here specifically. Let's go ahead and put this first piece up on the screen. First, he said, these judgments seem quite reasonable. The proposition that Chinese aid to Russia will vary according to the severity of attacks on Russia, and I would add, on Beijing's assessment assessment of how close Russia might be to failure on the battlefield strikes me as correct. He continues, put the next slide up on the screen. The fact that this analysis is focused on the potential impact of Ukrainian strikes on China's aid decision suggests Washington is worried that Beijing could intervene much more decisively to help Russia under some circumstances, which in turn implies that the level of any Chinese military aid has not yet reached alarming levels. And in some ways, I thought that was maybe the most significant takeaway. I've been trying to square these documents, these leaked documents, with what has been reported in the press. And in recent weeks, we have seen a number of reports that China is, quote, considering providing lethal aid to Russia and has not decided what they're going to do on that matter. What we didn't know is what sort of metrics China was potentially using to determine whether or not they were going to provide further lethal aid or lethal aid at all, because there's no evidence that they've provided lethal aid to this point whatsoever. So this gives us an insight potentially into the, pretty logical notion that, hey, if Russia looks like they're not doing too well in the battlefield, and if Ukraine is striking within Russia, then it makes it much more likely that China is going to fully come to the table on Russia's side, which again could really fundamentally change the dynamics of this conflict.
That's why I thought this was the most significant piece that we were able to report to all of you exclusively. And again, thank you to our premium members for giving us the confidence to do so. But the reason why is because, as you said, Krystal, this would fundamentally change the balance of power in the conflict itself, because then they would have another nuclear-armed superpower on their side, providing them with lethal weapons. But secondary, this shows us that the risk of escalation not only lies in how Moscow will respond, it's how Beijing will respond as well.
That's right.
And the increasing alliance between the two nations would endanger our position, not necessarily in Europe, but also possibly in East Asia, if they get, even more involved and involved deeply inside of the conflict, providing Russia with the aid. This also shows you the years-long risks that continue the longer that this goes on, where we would embroil us possibly, and not only NATO, in some sort of probable conflict with Russia, but that China is not necessarily going to sit here on the sidelines. It's clear here that the U.S. believes that China does see that they have some skin in the game in propping up Russia and making sure that it doesn't just go away, and that if they saw a direct role of Washington in some sort of attack on Moscow or on any strategically important Russian leader or others, which is not outside the Ukrainian realm of possibility, what we already know in their assassination campaign, that it very likely could trigger Beijing's total insertion into the conflict and would abandon any peace plan.
Yeah, so, this is why we have paid a lot of attention to the extracurricular activities, let's say, of Ukrainian intelligence services with regard to, blowing up a blogger in a cafe in St. Petersburg, killing Dugin's daughter as well, both of which, listen, they haven't been fully confirmed, but it looks fairly likely what happened here, let's just say. That's why we paid particular attention to these things, because any sort of provocation of this nature can really change the dynamics of the conflict and where this is potentially heading. So it's incredibly, incredibly significant here. And I also think it's telling that, the way that the reporting had been done previously indicate, okay, China's weighing their options, but didn't indicate where the risks and the fault lines and the red lines actually potentially lie. And that, in some ways, is the most critical piece of information here that you could possibly have in terms of gauging how we should involve ourselves and what sort of pressure we should be applying to the Ukrainian side in terms of their actions as well.
Yeah, so there you go. That's a story that we can report to you guys exclusively. It's one that we spent a lot of time on, trying to authenticate and get people's, opinions on, sending comment to the White House and to the Pentagon. We tried our best to handle it as responsibly as possible. And also thank you again to the premiums for giving us the confidence to go forward with this, because there's a lot of risks I don't think people understand, both legally, but also in terms of getting sued. There are the names of all kinds of non-public people in here, including high, of Ukrainian officials, or all others that one of the reasons that we thought a lot about was the dossier, and about how the publication of the dossier led to a lot of lawsuits because it was unverified allegations against very specific people that led to legal problems, and of course ignited a lot of Russiagate and others. So that's how we felt best to handle this one, and we're very happy to be able to give it to all of you.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.